The quantum already exists in your reality. You just haven't been ready for the radical change it offers. There's a lot of talk about the quantum in social media, but most people are missing the point because it's talked about from the very limited perspective of the mind. The reason you actually care about accessing the quantum resonance is because when you get to that level of vibration, your physical reality reorganizes around that new quantum vibrational order. The higher you are in quantum resonance, the more intentionally you're able to co-create the reality you get to experience. So that means that your reality, meaning your experience of life, can shift into a much higher resonating one with more magic, more synchronicity, access to higher dimensional levels of awareness, and way more spherical abundance. Abundance on all levels, from love to time to money, all of it. Who doesn't want that? And the funny thing is, at that quantum resonance, because you're so much more aware that you actually co-create everything infinitely, and because your life is so much fuller with abundance, you don't yearn for things in the same way, which ironically makes it easier to manifest things you want to co-create. The quantum realm is simply a frequency resonance that is much higher in vibration than most people's normal physical reality. It's accessible to everyone. You just need to know how. It already exists. It's there, waiting for you. You just haven't been able to access it yet. In this video, I'm going to share 3 takeaways to help you access the quantum and the radical transformation in your reality that it makes possible. My name is Cheong. I catalyze your shift from the ordinary to the exhilaration of the quantum by giving you the tools to change your frequency resonance so that the life you live matches the life you dream of. Takeaway number 1. You don't influence the quantum realm. It influences you. I have a client who is a professor of engineering and mathematics, extremely smart, and her mind works linearly in an extraordinarily efficient way. Now, she found frequency work because of her sister, and when she found it, she was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't wait to release all my distortion patterns. So here she was, releasing her distortion patterns. She comes to our retreats, and her frequency resonance really rises. And after one of the retreats, her resonance hits quantum resonance, and she realizes or recognizes that there are all these shifts that are happening in her experience. One day, she decides, okay, I got to go to the farmer's market, but I'm really pressed for time because I've got all these meetings, but I really want to get my veggies from the farmer's market because this is where I do my big shop. Off she goes to the farmer's market. Now, the thing is, there's usually a ton of traffic to get to this farmer's market because it's held once a week, and there's often jockeying for the parking. But this time, she'd just come back from this retreat and her frequency resonance was at that quantum resonance. And she noticed, as she was driving towards the farmer's market, that despite there being traffic about 500 feet away from her and around her, in her lane and immediately around her, there was no traffic. She's like, that's really weird. Then she gets to the farmer's market. And in the parking lot, there is like all these people lined up for parking spots, double parked, just mayhem in the parking lot. But when she enters, it seems like there's stillness and there's no one in front of her. Someone pulls out and she just pulls right into this parking spot. She's like, okay, weird. And it continued like that the entire experience. Everywhere there was a line for the veggies, when she would appear, no line was there. She got her veggies, gets into her car, gets home 20 minutes earlier than expected. So when your resonance is at the quantum level, everything in time-space in your lived reality can shift around it. Now, everything exists in the infinite field of possibilities. People have been writing about the field as a concept for a very long time. Deepak Chopra has written about this in the 80s. Lynn McTaggart has written a book called The Field. So there's a lot of books written about the field and how it holds infinite possibility. The quantum resonance exists in that field of the infinite. The thing is, you can only access that resonance if your own frequency resonance is high enough, because your frequency resonance is like a keyhole. It allows you to access a certain aspect or part of that field of the infinite. So let's just imagine that when you begin, your frequency resonance isn't that high. So this is the keyhole through which you perceive the infinite field of possibilities. You're only aware of what you see through this keyhole. You don't see everything else around it. But as your frequency resonance rises, the keyhole starts to get bigger, and what you perceive, experience, and can access of the infinite field of possibility gets bigger. So as your frequency resonance rises, you get to access the quantum resonance if your own frequency resonance is high enough. Now, the thing is, when you hit that quantum frequency resonance, it's not a thought. It's literally who you are. It is a rate of vibration. And as a result, what you think, what you want, your perspective, what you even know is possible for you is completely different, because at that rate of vibration, you're very aware that you are co-creating everything, and you're very aware that you are part of the oneness, and the oneness is part of you intrinsically. So when you're at that vibrational level, most people think, okay, you're just in that quantum resonance, you're going to be in it forever, 24/7. It's not like that. Your frequency resonance will ping up and down. At least that's what it is for most people. So sometimes you're up in that frequency resonance of the quantum, sometimes you're a little bit lower. And as your frequency resonance rises, you get to be in that quantum resonance more and more. And as you're in a higher and higher level of the quantum resonance, that's when you can do things like have more intention in terms of the timeline that you get to be in. You get to experience what my client did in terms of time and space being a little different in terms of what she experiences versus everyone else. What it is that you get to manifest in terms of the speed and the clarity at which you manifest. And also, you get to experience more and more of the brilliance of life. And there's an incredible expansion in the heart field for the opportunity to experience life in the embodiment. So how do you know that you're in that frequency resonance of the quantum and that you're not thinking that you're in the frequency resonance of the quantum and really, really hoping that you're just there? Well, first of all, you are more able to be in your center. So you're not as impacted by other people's emotions or stresses. You're not as triggered as much. You're much more neutral in terms of the outcome, meaning any outcome you're truly okay with because your resonance is much higher. You're in a greater state of surrender to what is. You recognize, well, I can't really control anything. But at the same time, you're co-creating everything. And I realize it sounds like opposite things, but the difference is between knowing and feeling that you are co-creating everything at a higher order, and then the human desire to try and control everything because you're afraid. That fear, that need to control, really is gone or much, much, much less loud. The other thing is you recognize your own frequency resonance versus what other people are feeling. Now, I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm so amazing and they are so unawakened. I don't mean it like that. You just recognize that other people's stories, other people's expectations, other people's experiences are theirs, and they have their own frequency resonance. It doesn't need to impact you. And you recognize that your frequency resonance and your connection to pure source, your awareness of that connection, truly is the most important thing. And when you're in that frequency resonance of the quantum, you really understand or are aware of the importance of the present moment of linear time. Because when you're in the present moment of linear time, you really are in that space of the eternal now. You have the access point to that infinite abundance, limitlessness, and you truly feel it. And you're not in your mind thinking about, oh my God, what if I don't have this or that? You don't have scarcity at all. Because when you're at that resonance of the quantum, you recognize your infiniteness, you recognize your limitlessness, and that you have access to all of it. So when you are resonating at that quantum resonance, and you're in that present moment of linear time, limitlessness truly is accessible to you. Takeaway number 2. Once you break through that resonance level of the quantum, the rules totally change. So I have this awesome, funny, crazy, amazing story to share with you. We were on our way to give a retreat on Bainbridge Island, which is just off of Seattle. Now, in order to get to Bainbridge Island, you have to take a ferry. So we had to do all of this stuff before we had to get onto this ferry to take us to Bainbridge Island. Now, the we is my husband, Chris, who does our AV, and our event coordinator, Fiona. And Chris and I had been over in Fiona's room, hotel room, because we're like, okay, we got to get all this stuff done before we get to the ferry, so how are we going to do that? We have our suitcases packed, we're all ready to go, and then Chris and I have to go get our suitcases from our hotel room in order for us to get into our rental car and leave. We go to get into our hotel room, and our key card doesn't work. So Chris is like, crap. So he goes all the way back down to the receptionist to recharge or whatever the heck they do to those key cards to make them work. And the receptionist says to him, well, we've been having trouble with our locks. So if the key card doesn't work this time, we're going to have to call maintenance for them to change the lock or whatever the heck they have to do. Now, remember, we're on a really, really tight time schedule because we got to get all this stuff done before we get to the ferry. So Chris sprints back up to our room to try those key cards. He swipes the first one, red light, can't get in. Swipes the second one, red light, we can't get in. And he and I look at each other and we're like, crap, right? Because we're starting to feel more and more pressed for time. So then Fiona, who's standing there, sort of quietly looks at us and says, hey, try my key card from my room. And Chris looks at her like she's entirely insane. I mean, she does know how keys work, right? I mean, the key that goes to the lock is what opens the lock. And the thing is, we'd each had our key cards in our pockets. We'd never taken them out. It's not like we misplaced it and changed things. So he was like, okay, fine. I'll just try your key card. He swipes her key card. The light goes green. The door opens. Now, all of us are standing there looking at this green light and the door open, being like, how is that possible? Because that key shouldn't have worked in that lock. But the thing is, because it did, now we could pick up our suitcases, leave on time, get everything we need to get done before we boarded that ferry. Now, we still to this day can't explain what happened. It was like a miracle, really, because you can't logically explain what happened. But from a frequency level perspective or from the quantum perspective, what happened was that because we were really all in that present moment of time, no one was completely freaking out and being like, oh my God, we're never going to make the ferry. It's your fault, blah, blah, blah. Now we have to wait for maintenance. And Chris wasn't in resistance when he took the key from Fiona. All of us were holding a higher level of resonance. We were in the flow of what was unfolding. We weren't in resistance at all. And because our frequency resonance was high, that quantum magic was able to be present and nonlinear possibility happened. So how do you break through to this quantum level of resonance? Well, you have to raise your frequency resonance, and you can't think your way there. It's not about using your mind to try to raise your frequency resonance. It's actually about raising your frequency resonance by releasing what I call distortion patterns, because distortion patterns are what keep your frequency resonance low. Now, I'm not saying that your mind is a terrible thing. It is a very important tool, and it can be really powerful. But the problem is that most people focus on their mind as the dominant way that they perceive, interact with, and are aware of the world. They don't really know how to move into a resonance that's beyond thought. So it's not that the mind is terrible, not at all. It's powerful, but to have it not be the dominant thing, the dominant force, but really to be led by your heart space. Now, a lot of people will think that I'm talking about love. Sure, love is important because it's a higher level frequency resonance. But the thing about your heart space, it is the access to the infinite. It is the access to unity consciousness. It is the access to the quantum. So the importance of the heart space is not just about love. It's about the access to so much more. Now, can you manifest successfully just using your mind and your will? Of course, people do it all the time. But the problem with manifesting from your mind alone is that you're still amplifying scarcity, because the reason that you're trying to force something to happen is because you feel the lack. You're not really in abundance. You're really manifesting because you're afraid that you don't have enough and that you need more. So what do you co-create more of? You co-create more scarcity. So it's like you have to keep creating and manifesting more and more and more, and it's never enough. You never feel complete. You never feel whole because you're still manifesting from that resonance of scarcity. But when you release enough of your distortion patterns and you're able to move your awareness and your consciousness into the heart space and be at that quantum level of resonance, you're aware that you're a part of everything. You're a part of the oneness. So of course it is limitless, and so too is abundance. You embody completeness, wholeness, limitless abundance. And so therefore, whatever you manifest amplifies abundance, and it amplifies abundance not only for you, but for everyone around you. To get to the quantum level of vibration, you have to release your distortion patterns to rise in your frequency resonance enough to actually access the quantum. Click on the link in the description below to get your free Frequency Accelerator group frequency calibration. This will help you start releasing those distortion patterns that keep you from experiencing the quantum and that keep you stuck in your mind. Takeaway number 3. Your access key to the quantum is your frequency resonance. I have a client who's been doing frequency work now for a few years, and she's been releasing her distortion patterns and really rising in her frequency resonance, so she often experiences the quantum. And because she's been doing so much frequency work, she's really aware from her own experience that how high her frequency is really matters in terms of how she feels, what she gets to experience, and what she gets to manifest. She was taking a trip with her sister, and they live in different places, so they were going to meet at the connection point. Her flight was late. And her sister was like, oh my God, she's never going to make it, because where she was going to land and where they needed to take off from wasn't in the same terminal. It was 2 terminals away. And her sister had gone up to the desk people and said, I'm sorry, my sister's flight's late. Can you hold the plane for us? And the ground crew was like, no, sorry, we're going to close these doors in the next 15 minutes. So her sister's sweating it. Meanwhile, my client is aware that she's probably going to miss this connection, or she thinks it's a very high possibility anyway. So here she is, aware of her frequency resonance, and she's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on my frequency resonance and raise it to the level of quantum. And when she did that, she had this feeling. She's like, okay, either they're going to change where the departing flight is leaving from, and it's going to leave from a gate adjacent to where I land, or there's going to be one of those cart things that are going to be available to take me to the terminal, and I'm going to make it to my flight on time. She lands. Luckily, she's seated somewhere near the front. She races off the plane, and as she comes off the plane, there's a cart that everyone is walking around with a very friendly man who is happy to take her 2 terminals over in order to make her flight right on time. So because she kept her frequency resonance high, magic happened. So how do you raise your frequency resonance? Well, there are many paths to the same thing. People do yoga and meditation and different energetic practices. All of those things raise your frequency resonance because you probably will notice that you feel better when you've done them. But the challenge with those things is it doesn't keep your resonance high permanently. You'll notice that after a little bit, your resonance will drop. You don't feel as good. So the way to raise your frequency resonance such that you keep moving up in your frequency resonance is to do something that I call frequency work. Now, this is the work that I do. I help you to release your distortion patterns at the level of frequency. So when you release the distortion patterns at the level of frequency, as a natural consequence, your frequency resonance rises. It's kind of like a hot air balloon. When you have all those sandbags, as you toss out the sandbags, the balloon is able to rise. Now, your distortion patterns come from a whole host of different places, but the main places are your ancestors or your lineage, and what your lineage experienced very much impacts you. So the field of epigenetics is starting to prove this. How your ancestors lived, what they experienced, what they felt, very much affects the field that is you and affects how it is that your genes express and the choices you make. Your distortion patterns also come from your culture, your religious distortion patterns. Whether or not you were born within a religious household, definitely your lineage was impacted by religion, so it affects you. And there's also your past lives. So frequency work helps you to release your distortion patterns at the level of frequency, so your physical life starts to mirror that. Now, when you release your distortion patterns, things start to change. You don't have the same amount of worry or fear or self-doubt or whatever it is that you often notice that you experience. You start to have different emotions. You start to have space from your thoughts. You can question your thoughts and your beliefs, and you can start to feel like, wait a minute, these don't necessarily define who I am. I can choose something different from me. You start to feel more like, wait a minute, I have more authority. I can co-create my reality. I have the ability to manifest something different. And you start to realize that as your frequency resonance rises, it's not just you that you're impacting. You're starting to impact those around you just by being the frequency resonance that you are. So if you'd like to learn more about your distortion patterns, how to release them, and how to increase your frequency resonance, then check out my next video. I'll see you inside.